I don't think for a second we should pretend that he wants a ceasefire because he cares about Palestinian lives all of a sudden.
If Donald Trump does get a peace deal in Gaza, will the left-leaning party policies, will they finally admit that he's the Don done good?
Has the Don done good? Well, I think the Don thinks he's done good. There's not much doubt about that. James?
Look, we should definitely recognise President Trump's role in what's happening in the Middle East. And we should recognise the fact that us working with him and with other partners around the world is the way that we have now got to this position. And, you know, can I just say that we've had so many false dawns in terms of getting a ceasefire, getting hostages out, getting aid in over the last 2 years that I almost dare not to hope that this is a real breakthrough. But it does feel a bit different. You know, it does feel there is a glimmer of real hope in what has been announced in the last 24, 36 hours. And, you know, I just hope so deeply that this is a ceasefire that lasts and all the hostages are released and aid gets in, and then we get on that pathway towards a two-state solution with a safe and secure Israel alongside a Palestinian state, which we know is the way to have long-lasting peace in the region. And I think that's what we need to focus on.
Are you saying that you contributed to this peace deal? Are you saying the Labour government contributed to it?
The Prime Minister's been playing a role with international partners.
Well, Secretary Rubio in Trump's cabinet has come out publicly saying that the early and, in their view, premature recognition of a Palestinian state actively set back the peace deal.
The recognition,
do you want to apologise?
The recognition. Let me take this head on. Right, the recognition of the state of Palestine was a decision that we took along with other international partners. Other countries did the recognition around the same time as that we did, and that's important.
You all made a bad decision.
It's important to have a collaboration with international partners when we're talking about what's happening in the Middle East. And the reason why we did that, the reason why we decided to recognise Palestine at this stage, is to make sure that we keep alive that prospect, that hope of a two-state solution.
So Secretary Rubio literally said that recognising Palestine prematurely
Palestinian state
back
alongside Israel is the way to have
long-term
peace and security for both the Palestinians and the Israelis.
I should say that we're recording this programme before the Israeli cabinet has finished meeting and signed off on this ceasefire deal. I'm saying that just in case it all goes pear-shaped. But I'm obviously fervently hoping that it does not. Zach, is it time for left-leaning political parties, that's why I'm coming to James and to you first, is it time they admit the Don done good?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that Israel's ongoing genocide has resulted on average in a classroom of children dying every single day in Palestine. 55,000 children are malnourished, so of course a ceasefire should be welcomed. But also let's be clear about who Donald Trump is. Not only is he a racist misogynist, he's someone who said that Gaza should be turned into a luxury Riviera. So I don't think for a second we should pretend that he wants a ceasefire because he cares about Palestinian lives all of a sudden. He wants a ceasefire. I think, second, whilst welcoming the ceasefire, we also know this is really a three-stage process. We need this ceasefire as quick as possible, but we also then need to talk about peace. And we need to make sure we're bringing everyone around the table. And I think our role in that is making sure that Palestinian voices are heard in the same way that Israeli voices are heard. And the idea that Tony Blair is going to be at the head of this table is like bringing an arsonist to put out a fire. It just makes absolutely no sense at all. And actually, we need to make sure that the right people, the people on the ground from the grassroots, are the people leading this. And then thirdly, I think there does need to be a reckoning. We need to recognise that this has been a stain on our humanity, our global humanity. And our government has not just been complicit. They have actively enabled with the selling of arms to Israel. It's time to stop the genocide, stop sharing intelligence, and make sure we have a free Palestine. Thank you.
Can I just... Robert, where are you sitting? I've lost track of where you are. Can we just get a microphone back to Robert? What's your view?
Yeah, I'm no big fan of Trump, but I mean, if it does work, then you've got to give him some sort of credit. And yeah, he probably is doing it for himself, his own ego, but who cares if it brings peace? It doesn't matter, does it?
OK. Man here in the stripy T-shirt.
Couldn't we have reached this point a lot quicker if Trump and Starmer and all the politicians had put more pressure on Israel to actually stop the genocide in Gaza? I mean, it is a genocide because the UN says so.
Could we have got there quicker? Nigel?
I don't think we could have got there quicker because Hamas was not releasing the hostages. And actually, the British government could have put pressure when they unilaterally, when they declared, declaration recognising Palestine. Why didn't they put and release the hostages as a condition? Why didn't they put conditions on Hamas? They didn't. That was ridiculous.
Okay with,
that was,
with Israel
of course I'm not, sir. Please don't.
Not members of Hamas.
Sir, of course I am not.
Okay,
who did nothing wrong.
Of course I am
answer.
not. Please don't put words in my mouth. I'm saying actually we could have helped move things forward if actually we'd said, you know, at some point or some alternative thing, part of the hostages were part of the deal. They weren't. I think that was absolutely terrible. And all the other countries, just because others joined in and did the same, they were all wrong. Doesn't make it right just because other people do stupid things as well. It's a bit more complicated than that. In terms of the answer to the question, the gentleman's right. Donald Trump transparently deserves some credit for this because he's probably the only person in the world who could help actually get us to this point, along with and working with, of course, Qatar, Egypt, Turkey and others. But this is a horrendous situation. I'm really pleased that we've got to this point. But as somebody who's met the parents of hostages, and I was in Israel and Palestine, by the way, a few weeks ago, I have seen the harm and the damage on both sides. I am relieved and encouraged. It looks like we are now going to see an end of solution. But let's be clear here. There was a ceasefire. It was broken on the 7th of October when Hamas conducted terrorist attacks.
Woman at the back there in the glass.
I've been to Israel and I've been to the West Bank several times over the years, and I've met some really, really wonderful Jewish people. I met some really, really wonderful Palestinian people. And I've encountered some very scary extremists on both sides. Mm-hmm. But what we have here today from Donald Trump are words. It's deeds, not words. The detail behind what happens after today, and I really do pray today that that ceasefire happens, is the devil in the detail. Is this going to be a long-term lasting peace? I really don't know. I really pray they do. But until we recognise as individuals, as people who live, just trying to live their daily lives on both sides, and to try and understand the impact on both sides, and to put to one side the labels that we so happily slap on people, and we just see Jew and Muslim and Israeli and Palestinian and Christian, and we actually talk about what that means and the detail and the complexity behind that, then they haven't got a hope of anybody truly understanding the other person's point of view. It's too political, it's too much about the easy slap on the labels, and we need to think about the people it affects on both sides.
Dear, is it time for the left-leaning political parties to admit that Don done good?
Well, look, in my lifetime, I think this is the closest we have come to an enduring peace in the Middle East in my lifetime. I think that is an incredible thing. Of course, there's more work to do. Are there ways this could go wrong from here? Of course. But the fact that we are in this situation is something to behold. I'm personally hugely grateful for it. I think if it succeeds, and again, we are closer to that success than ever, certainly, again, in recent history, I think huge credit then must go to President Trump. I want to reiterate, though, the notion that Labour have in any way contributed to this when literally Secretary Rubio has gone on the record to explicitly say that the early, in their view, premature recognition of a Palestinian state set back the process is important. But yes, look, I echo that perspective that there has been untold suffering on both sides, and it is enormously hopeful right now, and I really hope President Trump succeeds.
So the Nobel Peace Prize Committee announce who they are going to award that prize to tomorrow. Now, Donald Trump has made no secret that he says lots of people tell him he should get it. You kind of get the impression he thinks he should get it as well. Should he, Zia?
I think that's a decision for the committee to make.
But of course it is. Well, but do you think he should get it?
All right. So you know what? Let's talk about this.
Come on.
President Obama was awarded that award. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in his first year of his presidency, and his own words, in Obama's own words, he said, "For what?" I think is objectively and decisively true. That what President Trump, like him or loathe him, if you will just look at the objective facts, the peace accords where across the Middle East, which he got no credit for whatsoever, and I understand why people have concerns about President Trump, but if you look at it objectively, if President Trump won it, I think it's very difficult to make an argument that President Trump doesn't deserve it.
Annabelle.
Well, just those 2 points. First, should Trump win the Nobel Peace Prize? No, I don't think he should, because whilst he's being sensible on Ukraine now, what he has done since becoming US president for a second time is embolden Putin, is encourage aggression, and made it more difficult for there to be a resolution to that conflict. This is not a peacemaking president for all of his potential in getting that agreement over the line in the Middle East, which of course we should absolutely all cautiously welcome. But to the question about whether Don has done good specifically on the issue of Israel and Gaza, yes, I think he has, and I think these developments completely discredit the actions that we've seen of the left in Britain and the way in which they have fueled anti-Semitism in this country to such a degree that 1 in 5 people now hold views which are considered to be anti-Semitic, which personally I find absolutely horrifying. It has also discredited the Starmer administration, which over the course of the last 2 years, since that terrible pogrom on October the 7th, has treated one of our great allies and the democracy surrounded by a ring of fire in the Middle East as though it's some sort of adversary. So we have suspended certain arms sales. We have recognised Palestinian statehood, which, as Zia says, has made peace that much more difficult to achieve. And it would be rather nice if we could hear some sort of apology or see some sort of contrition from those who have contributed and behaved in this way.